girl, you are so pretty, 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 pretty. Baby girl, you are so pretty, 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 pretty. Females made you just to trick me, trick me, trick me, trick me.
Hi, if you are seeing this, it means my book, Everything Was Here But You, is out now. This book touches on love, loss, grief, and the weird feeling that something is missing when you're building your beautiful, big, accomplished dream life. Check it out now. I'm sure you will find something in this book that you can relate to, and I hope it feels like a huge hug. You can get it now on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. Mwah!
Hey everyone, today I'm with a very special guest. Hi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Shawndre Layden, and I'm a mental health counselor and owner of A Better Tomorrow Counseling.
Great counseling group. Thank you for doing everything you do. I think mental health is so important, and a lot of individuals don't realize that until it's too late and they're in crisis. But I feel like there's nothing wrong with getting therapy and getting, services because you really need it in today's world.
Absolutely, absolutely. The need is real, and we encourage people all the time to consider their mental health as part of their whole well-being.
No, it's so true. If you don't take care of your physical health, your mental health will suffer. And if you don't take care of your mental health, your physical health will suffer.
Absolutely.
So, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about understanding trauma and the nervous system and how the nervous system responds to like chronic stress versus acute trauma? I feel like we all see some chronic stress in today's normal day to day, unfortunately.
Absolutely, absolutely. And chronic stress in itself is maybe more of a medical term, right? And we know that it can cause strokes, it can cause certainly a lot of different things to happen medically to somebody. Now, how does that tie over to, as you asked, acute trauma? So with acute trauma, that usually happens from events or experiences that somebody has had in their life, right? Now, they can kind of go hand in hand, to be honest with you, because when we relive a trauma or we've been re-traumatized, that acute stress can most certainly kick in. So with that in mind, the nervous system is going to respond in kind of more of a heightened sense, if that makes sense, right? So you may continuously feel like you're always kind of living in a chaotic lifestyle or not able to fully be at rest, right? You're always at a heightened level. And when we think about that, each of us have a different baseline, a baseline meaning where we're kind of comfortable, right? We're feeling okay, quote unquote, right? But our baselines are all different, and that usually is dependent upon trauma we've had in our life or what our threshold is for handling stress, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. And I love that you mentioned that because I think sometimes, we can kind of lose our crap over like you burn your toast and suddenly you're screaming at everybody. And it's like your baseline maybe was a little out of pocket that day. Like maybe you raised it too much or it was too low. And you just started the day like, I'm going to be frustrated about everything. And then suddenly one small thing makes you mad about everything. So it really does work that way. I think that is so interesting to think about because we should be a little more cautious on how we treat people around us too. We're all dealing with something and you can get stressed and yell at someone, but that doesn't do anything positive. They're probably having a hard time with something too, but you got to regulate your nervous system and your emotions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I agree. If I have a client who explains a situation where they feel like their response wasn't appropriate or was exaggerated, right? You mentioned we have these maybe heightened responses. I tend to ask the client what is really going on for them in that moment, right? Are they not feeling heard? Are they not feeling respected? Are they fearful of something, feel rejected, right? There's something else that's going on that's triggering past trauma, and that trauma is what we're responding to, which is why it feels like such a not appropriate response for what's going on, right? I spilled my coffee, why am I shouting, or why am I
Not the
speaking
coffee.
to myself?
I mean, when I
Right,
spill my coffee, I'm kind of shouting because I love coffee, but that's not the point.
Same thing with couples, though. We have a running joke in couples therapy that it's never about the dishes, right? But such a common thing, right? We come home, oh, the dishes aren't done, right? And we get into this big argument. And what it turns into, if you listen to the dialogue in that argument, turns into you you never, I always. And what that tells me is there's a balance or not an equal feeling there among chores or feeling unheard or things like that. So it's really not about the dishes in that moment. It's underlying feelings that are coming out because that is, right, the straw that broke the camel's back in that sense. So
Exactly. And that makes so much sense. And it's like, not even with couple, like just couples, you're right. Like that can fit for a mom and daughter, a mom and son, the dishes aren't done. Okay. What are you actually so pissed about today that you have to lose it on your kid about the dishes? You know what I mean? I think we all have things that we don't necessarily share, but if you don't put the backpack down, you're gonna keep carrying it and it's gonna keep getting heavier.
absolutely, absolutely.
Can trauma show up as kind of a physical symptom, even when like medical tests or, maybe you get diagnosed with PTSD come back normal?
Uh, Absolutely. I mean, the first thing that popped into my mind as you asked that was, when I think about a panic attack, right? People don't realize they're having a panic attack. So when people tell me, oh, I have panic attacks, it's like, well, tell me a little bit about that, right? Because
Right.
usually in that moment we don't know. And most people who are experiencing panic attacks will go to an emergency room because they truly feel they're dying. They believe they're having a heart attack or some sort of cardiac issue. They can't breathe. Um, right. And they truly are in a panic because it's bringing us right to our fight or flight system, right? It's hitting that nervous response system. So with that in mind, that's more of a physical response, right? That's coming out of us. We're not thinking it's something, mentally going on in that moment because it feels more physical. Not only brought on by trauma, actually, panic attacks can actually happen when everything is calm, but it's coming from a traumatic event. At some point. So it's kind of like almost similar to PTSD in the sense that you're not experiencing it in that moment, but something kind of brings you back to it, right? Something's kind of channeling it at that moment. And it's usually not recognizable to people. So absolutely, we can have physical symptoms from something that's going on internally that's not medical, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And thank you for sharing that because I've had times where I'm like having the best day ever. And then I'm like, why am I anxious? What's going on? And then suddenly a song, a smell, a scent, something triggers me. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to feel this and then I'm going to keep moving on with my day. But you're right. Like a small little thing can really send you back to whatever stressed you out in the first place.
Yes, yes.
So, why do our bodies sometimes react before our brains can catch up?
So usually that's like a survival instinct, right? In other words, God forbid, right? Somebody comes up to attack you. You may, right, throw a punch. You may kick them or run, and you're not thinking cognitively, this is what I need to do, or maybe even that I need to defend myself. Your body is reacting before your mind is. And I feel like that kind of can carry over to other situations. If you've ever seen somebody lose a loved one, you may see them kind of buckle at the knees and fall to the ground before they can even process that person has passed, right? It's so our body is kind of almost realizing something before we're connecting it up here because we're in such a usually shock, right? Kind of moment where it is happening in slow motion, which is kind of the indicator of potential PTSD. But our body is having more of an initial right response to that to run towards it or even run away from it when when something's happening. That's more of a survival feeling.
Makes so much sense. So, I mean, we obviously hear a lot about like fight or flight. Sometimes something happens and your body doesn't know if it's a lion or if it's just a guy not texting you back or if it's, some catastrophic event in your family. I think it's hard sometimes when you've been through traumatic experiences to make that like, what exactly is this triggering in me and does it feel bigger than it actually is? Can you kind of touch on what people can do in that sort of situation?
It's really hard because it's such an individual, unique situation for people. Um, when they're having a moment, I think where it's not catching up, as you said, I think it's really important to say to yourself, Let me take a deep breath and pause for a moment. And this, again, it's really hard to do when you're in a survival moment, right?
Keep saying that. I
But
feel like we hear that online. Take a deep breath. It's all gonna be okay. I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
it's so hard to do in that moment, but you're going to be on a delay anyhow. And to kind of just for a second, just recognize what's going on. Look at your surroundings. You may have an enhancement of smell or sight because everything else, or even noise in our ears, because everything else is kind of funneling around so quickly in that moment. So I think trying to pause for a moment, just recognize what's happening, as long as you're safe to do so, obviously, depending, this is just a hypothetical, but grounding yourself. And I did want to talk a little about grounding techniques.
Please.
As far as this. That could look very simple as far as right now I'm doing this podcast with you, Rylan, right? And for the next 20, 30 minutes, right? I'm sitting in this podcast, we're discussing things, and that's all I'm responsible for. That is a prime example of a grounding technique, right? So right now I'm going to sit down on this chair, I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm going to focus on my breathing. That is grounding me to what's happening right now, not what's happened 5 minutes ago, not what's happening 5 minutes in the future. It's holding me right to this moment, right? So if I really wanted to take it to the next step, I wouldn't even say I have another 20, 30 minutes of doing a podcast. I would say, right now I'm responding to this one question because I don't know what Rylan might say to me next, right? So.
I sometimes, the listeners can tell you, I sometimes throw in some random ones and, keep my guests off guard, but that's okay. I like you. I'm not gonna like throw you through the ringer at 11 a.m. when you've probably not had 2 cups of coffee yet.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But yes, grounding techniques is important, and it decreases our anxiety really quickly in that moment, because when you think of our anxiety, it's based around unknowns. It's based around, not knowing what to do next. And if it focuses just on what I'm responsible for in this second, that alleviates a lot of, right, I have to make a phone call, I have to respond to an email, I have to, right, like all that's over here. I'm just sitting here right now answering this question with you.
Thank you for saying that, because I think like as humans we like to rush things and okay, what's next, and it's like it doesn't have to be that way, because that's where anxiety comes from. You're right, like we don't know certain things, the unknown is scary, and we like to almost like fill in the blanks because we don't know how things are going to go. You can expect to have a good day and then the day goes down the drain, and it's like, what the heck just happened? Like, why is everything falling apart? But why can humans not kind of handle, okay, I don't know what's going to happen? Why can't we just say, I don't know what's going to happen and I'm okay with that? Where does the need to fill in the blank come from?
First of all, we weren't made to multitask, right? We were made to survive. And when, we've evolved a long way since, our prototypes, but right, we still have those initial instincts in us, right? And when we multitask, it's not really a good thing, right? It's something that kind of puts our attention in multiple areas instead of focusing one task and completing it. So to answer your question, I think, when we feel that we're kind of not able to stay on task with things, prioritizing things, maybe making a list, what do I have to get done today versus like, what would I like to get done today? Those are really helpful suggestions I give to clients. I feel like you asked me something else and I'm not answering
No,
it. Can
you
you
are.
repeat what you asked?
You are.
It was something more about the.
You are though, because you're like I said, like the unknowns, and you're like filling it in. Like we're not supposed to
That's what it was. Why do we fill in the one? We want to fill in the blanks. That's what you asked me. I wanted to make sure we answered that. We do that because we don't sit very well with the unknowns. And what do? We say, well, what if this and what if that? And we try to problem solve, right? And if you think about it, without the multitasking, that is the job's brain. The
Right.
job's brain is to problem solve. And when it doesn't have clarity on something, it has to give you options. And that can be a little rabbit hole to go down with the what ifs and could this and could that, and right, all these hypotheticals that just give us more anxiety because none of them have any factual evidence yet. They're just right based off of our emotions of what we want or what we fear.
Right.
That being said, we usually go more to the negative side, right? I would say 9 times out of 10, we don't say, oh, this would be my best outcome and I can't wait because this is what's going to happen.
Right.
We could if we reframe that, but generally we go over to what is our worst case. And usually that's extreme as well. And somewhere in between, right, is where we'll fall with most decisions. But I say this, and I know this is a long-winded answer, but even if we get an unfavorable answer, we can then move forward with that information and decide what we're going to do, which gives us back control, which gives us back not having the unknown there anymore. And again, it might make other anxieties off of what that new information is, but we're no longer stuck in the what ifs. So even if it's an unfavorable response, I'm stressed out because I don't know how I did on my midterm. Oh my God, I got my midterm back and I failed.
Right.
Well, now I need to do extra credit. Now I need to go to tutoring. Now right? We have options that we say, okay, here's what I need to do to fix this. But now I know. Um, yeah,
I love that. And I think it's really cool to like recognize that because you're right. Like the human brain hates to know, like not know, I guess. It hates to not know what's going to happen. And if we all like expected the positive outcome, you probably wouldn't be in business if everyone wasn't overthinking and worrying.
would be lovely though. Not being in business, but
Right. To not have to,
if we all had more positive thoughts.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It would be nice. It would be nice. But I'm a positive person and I can give my friends advice. And then when it happens to me, I'm like, this is horrible things gonna happen with this person or with this situation. That's how my brain works. But I think it's to sometimes realize, like you said, we have options. Okay, you failed. Cool, you can get tutoring. You have ways around that. Someone ghosted you. Would you want that person in your life long term? No, I hope your self-respect is high enough to say, you want to do that to me? I don't want you in my life. You know what I mean? And I think like realizing no matter what happens, it's not the end of the world and you'll be okay because you have yourself. I think that's truly important. And I do want to kind of touch on this with you. Why do you think people tend to control and put so much of their identity in relationships? Because I think the problem when you do that is when that relationship changes, fluctuates, or ends, you lose who you are, right?
Absolutely. And there's a few factors to that, right? There's people pleasing, there's wanting to feel acceptance or, get validation from another person, right? Security, for many people, right? Having that companionship. So there's many factors of why we kind of lose ourselves in a relationship. And some would argue, if it's at the point of marriage and things like that, two do become one, right? And that's okay. However, to your point, when I work with clients who have gone through a long-term, breakup where they really don't have their own friend group, they don't have right, hobbies anymore, or they don't even know who they are, right? They're coming out of a divorce and they've been married 20 years, right? Like that's really, really hard. And I think it's a vulnerability to ask yourself, who am I? It's a vulnerability to go out there as a 40-year-old woman and try to make friends, right? There's a vulnerability of reaching out to people that maybe you used to be very close with, but you have ghosted because you've been with your partner and now you're trying to reestablish those relationships, right? And there's nothing wrong with any of those things, but that vulnerability that we experience, right? Sometimes that fear is much bigger than the reward in our minds. In reality, that reward is much bigger. Right? If that friend group picks back up again and you now have a good set of girlfriends or guy friends, right? So, but I think there is a comfort that many people experience in that partnership initially that unknowingly does relinquish those things. It doesn't just happen overnight, it's over time.
I agree. And I mean, I guess to that point, why do you think people sometimes repeat these relationship patterns even when they know better?
Oh, great question. I if these walls could talk now.
Right, no, right, real, real. We all want to know,
I've
actually.
I've had many clients, but I'll say women, even though it's both men and women, but I'll stick with women for my example that say, I just pick crappy partners. I have terrible taste in men, right? Like
Girl,
this or
what?
that. And my response is no, but you're picking the same person.
In a different font. Yeah.
You're picking that person you want to fix or help. You're picking that person that comes with a lot of chaos in their life ahead of time that you're signing up for, right? You're picking that person who has a terrible track record with partnerships. One of the activities I love to give my clients is to make a list of what their ideal mate would look like, right? Take all your past relationships, take the good and the bad, the red flags, the right things that are must-haves, the deal breakers, everything, right? And morph this person that would be your true ideal mate, right? And
Right.
then here's the big question that comes in, because that's easy.
Right.
Are you someone who would attract that person?
Oh,
And that usually, yes, I usually get that reaction where people say, oh, wait a minute, like that was fun because I was creating this other person who I'm going to fix all their stuff. But wait a minute, right? Am I somebody who, do I have my stuff together? Am I not having enough red flags that I could attract a partner with those traits and qualities, right?
right.
Um, so that's something I think that's really the important part of that exercise. We can all create our dream person, but then saying, am I showing the same qualities? Have I done enough self work that that's who I would attract?
Well, and that's so like thought provoking for me because it really like not that like you have to love yourself before someone else can love you, but I think you have to accept yourself before having someone else tell you you're pretty or amazing or smart because if you don't think that about yourself, it's going to feel empty when it comes from someone else. And I think that's so true. You have to like meet someone, you can only meet someone where you met yourself, and you can't expect someone to have language for something or show up for you if they can't show up for themselves, if they can't choose themselves. So I think you saying that like just made my mind go, wow, like that's so true because it's oftentimes it's like this person sucks, they don't talk, they don't communicate, but it's like, well, what do you do? Like how do you act in the relationship? We often want to shift blame to someone else when it's like maybe we don't work well together. Maybe I have some things I need to work on. And I think people can truly mirror to us what we need to work on. And sometimes that's why people do ghost and do leave and do get uncomfortable because there's like this mirror you're showing them, like, hey, this is what you're going to have to become to meet me. And sometimes they're like, oh, wait, like I can't do this. Like I'm going to leave. I think a broken mirror is not going to judge another broken mirror. It's going to judge a regular mirror because that regular mirror shows them this is who I have to be to function, to live this beautiful big life and to love properly. And I think sometimes people get scared. So thank you for saying that.
Absolutely. And I've heard that before, people get intimidated or they self-sabotage
Right.
because they don't feel that they can meet what that other person's bringing to the table. That other person, great, right? Like they got a good job, they got their life together, right? And here I am maybe struggling in some of those areas. All of a sudden, I feel less than. So, right, I'm not going to respond or I'm not going to move forward and pursue that. And then I end up feeling bad about myself. Maybe there's some shame there. And then what do? I end up dating someone who doesn't have all those qualities I just said I wanted, and I'm settling and I'm getting
Mhm.
frustrated because now I've chosen another person that's disappointed or let me down in some way. But
You're staying stuck too. And that's what I always say, like, I was just telling one of my friends, she was like, I want a boyfriend. I'm like, yeah, you could go get anyone. You could find a homeless guy to be your boyfriend. But the thing is, what kind of boyfriend do you want? Do you want someone that will match you and be a good fit for you? Or do you want to fill the space to just say you are going to fill the space? I mean, I don't want to be with a man who's going to put me in therapy for 5 years. You know what I mean? I,
absolutely,
right?
absolute quality, right? What are they bringing to the table? Because I agree, most
Right,
people can find somebody that will, right, go out on a date with them or,
right,
whatever. It's not about, we think about attractiveness and stuff like that. That really comes into play only at certain terms.
right,
Most of us could find a mate if we really wanted one.
right,
However, right, do they have anything going for them, or am I strictly just looking for someone to
right.
take to a wedding, right, for a date
Right,
or
right,
something?
exactly. It's like wait, let's reevaluate. I don't know. If it doesn't matter in 5 years, I don't give it 5 minutes. That's my, I don't like games. I don't like just doing things. I do things fully, and if you're not gonna appreciate me and what I do and who I am, the door's right there.
That's good. You have good self-value.
Well, I mean, it's taken some years for me to get there, but I think it's important because you know what? Like you're stuck with you for the rest of your life. Why are you gonna have someone into your life that doesn't really accept you and you're gonna have to shrink or water you down yourself? That's not how it goes.
Absolutely. And in order to sustain in something we know is pretty broken, we minimize behaviors, we minimize actions, and we sell ourselves so short because we're stuck in something that we're lying to ourselves is going to change or can change. And the reality is, and I've talked to many couples who've broken up or divorced, and there's a commonality of all that changed those last few years was I wasted more time in a situation that, right, didn't improve. And guess what, right? One thing we can't get back is time. So
Exactly. And it's like sometimes that had to end, or if it would have ended you. I mean, sometimes endings suck and I hate them, but they're truly what's best because they give you space to grow and love yourself enough to find something more, worth your time, worth your value, and that matches more of who you are.
which is such an interesting concept because I agree with you 100%. We can't be set up for the next good thing if we're still sitting in a bad thing. Um, but most of us, when we go through that breakup, really struggle to say, like, this is ending and I'm okay with that because, right, the next best thing is going to be coming. And, right,
But it
instead,
doesn't work like that.
nobody's ever going to
That's
date
my
us
person.
again. We're,
That's my
right, going to
soul.
be single forever. And
Right.
here you are 25, right? Like it's just not reality, but that's what our brain tells us, right?
Really, it
Bit
really
of self-talk.
always. What would you say is the difference between intuition and trauma responses? I think this is so important with relationships because you can be like, this is my person. I love this person so much, or we're trauma bonded.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, intuition, pretty much when I think of just definition, intuition to me is something that you kind of have a feeling about, or right, a gut feeling,
Right.
right? That's my intuition. Um, when I think about kind of more of a trauma bond, it's a little bit of a slippery slope, right? Because something really bad had to happen in order for us to only have this shared experience. Now,
Right. Thank you for saying
that can bring
like
people
on
close.
TikTok, it's so like, oh, trauma bonded. I'm like, that's not that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's something that can bring you closer, and that's, not a bad thing necessarily. But it can't be the only tie in the relationship. In other words, right, we stay with each other because, right, we've trauma bonded years ago, and I can never give up on that person. Well, that isn't really right. That's like staying together for the kids. Like it doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
Like it's I'm choosing to live unhappily now because we have this shared experience. Well, guess what? If you're not together, you still have that shared experience and you can still choose to honor it. Probably more healthy, honestly.
Right. Exactly. What?
So, but intuition, going back to that, I think when I think about that, I say to myself, what is the gut feeling in that moment? What is it telling you, right? Because our head and our heart are usually not aligned
Oh, completely.
when we're not in a good place in our relationships, right? Our heart might be the trauma bond telling us, right? Well, we have to stay together. We went through this thing that only we understand. But
Right.
our head might have more of the intuition to say, this just isn't working for me anymore.
Right. Which is so like complicated because it's like logically you can know something, but emotionally you're like, no, like that's my person. I love them so much, but logically you're like, this can't work out. Like, and that's
And
okay.
you can love someone, and not be in love with them. Let me clarify that as well.
I want that on a shirt. That's no, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's wow. I think that just healed like a lot of us. Why would you say, because I feel like with relationships, self-talk is so important. We kind of talked on that a little bit. Why would you say shame is such a powerful emotional driver? I feel like when you're in a relationship, it's so easy to feel bad. It's so easy to let the shame drive the car, especially from past experiences, taking it into a new relationship. Why would you say it's this powerful thing and it's hard to like kind of let go of it?
For me, shame is very individualized. And when we think about feeling shame over something, there's usually a responsibility we hold in that. There's an accountability, there's something we want to change about ourselves or something we need to fix about ourselves. I disappointed that person. I feel horrible. I feel shameful of this action I did that hurt this person or hurt my family, right? So there's an ownership of my actions, my behavior, what I've done in that. And why is it such a powerful driver? Well, because guess what? That means we have to change something.
Ooh,
And then there's an acceptance and forgiveness that comes with that, right? So shame isn't something we can really project with others, right? And a lot of our emotions we talked about that, right? I can put it on why this person's a bad partner, but not see that I do the same thing in the relationship. Shame is, there's ownership in shame, I feel.
I agree. I agree. And I feel like it's not like it comes out of nowhere. Like if you're experiencing shame, it comes from something. And I think we should be gentle with ourselves because it usually means you went through something, you feel bad about still.
Well, and when we feel bad or we feel shame, it's around someone or something we care about,
That's wow. That's
right? We don't feel shame for stuff we don't give two cares about, right? Like if it doesn't matter to me, I'm probably not going to feel shameful about it. I'll just be like, yep, I did it, right?
it.
When there's shame and or remorse, regret, it's because there's some strong connections there of wanting to right a wrong and feeling bad about something,
And
which
let me,
usually indicates that we care.
right, let me take that a step further. Let's say two people love each other, but they can't be with each other right now, but they're all right, like they're in okay contact. Would that person that experiences the shame most likely avoid the other person and not really reach out to them because of that? Like, can shame prevent someone from talking to you or even, noticing you exist because it's wow, like I really did this to hurt this person and it couldn't go the proper way I wanted it to, so I'm gonna have to almost never talk to them again because of it.
It could, if their logic is telling them in that moment, I've hurt this person so much, the best thing I can do is stay away.
Wow.
Um, that might be a real thing, right? Now that might feel very different on the other end of that, right? The person may wish they'd reach out, wish they'd return their calls, wish all these things. But if the person really rationalizes that, I can't be a good partner right now, or I can't be that person for him or her, the best thing for me to do is to step away. They may do that.
Wow. Sometimes it's like beautiful though. I've thought about that because I'm like, you know what? Someone cares about me enough to need to step away from me than continue to hurt me.
They may care more about our feelings or be able to see it outside of ourselves, and it doesn't feel good, right?
Right.
Because we want what we want. But in the long term, it actually may benefit that person, that that person was able to exit their life and let them heal.
Yeah, it's truly beautiful. So I kind of want to wrap this up a little bit and ask you a little bit about, maybe someone listening feels too much. What would you recommend for them who maybe they feel like their emotions are a burden, they feel like they feel too much, and there's something wrong with that? What would you tell them if they're listening today?
Let me just start with being an empath is a beautiful thing.
That's me to a bad degree.
Being an empath means that you care about people, you might feel their experiences, feel their emotions, right? And I don't think emotions are bad.
Right.
Now, where it can get dicey or maybe not be good for the person or become toxic is if we take it on with no relief for ourselves. In other words, if I can sit in a session with a client, I can empathize with them during the session. I can try to put myself in their shoes. I can try to understand their experiences and their feelings, and I can help, heal them through that. Then that's wonderful, right? But my job wouldn't be sustainable for any human being if I carried the weight of their problems past that session.
Right.
There has to be a little bit of a turn off valve, and most mental health counselors, at least who have been doing it a while, realize burnout happens if we don't give ourselves appropriate breaks, if we don't pause in between session and have a few moments to step outside or just deregulate in some way where we can kind of hold that new space for the next client that isn't already sitting heavy. um, I don't want to bring that home to my family each night. I want to be able to be attentive to them and listen to them and be engaged with them and not be right. Now, there's always going to be certain situations where something really hits close to home, or maybe you're really worried a client's experiencing a suicidal ideation or something that you're a little concerned about. That's normal that maybe sits with you, and you might give a follow-up call in the morning just to check in on them, right? And make sure they're okay, or make sure they have a safety plan in place. But for the most part, being able to sit with someone, experience that with them is a beautiful thing. And then practicing your own self-care and regulation to kind of say, gosh, I feel for them, I pray for them, I write whatever my method is of sending positive vibes their way, whatever that looks like, right? There, I'm holding them in my thoughts. But now I need to go do this next thing, right? And being able to kind of shut that off is healthy, because it can be overwhelming if we take on everything with no outlet. It's not sustainable.
No, I agree. And I appreciate you for saying that because I'm very empathetic till the cows come home and I will cry about something. And then I'm like, wait, I'm giving too much energy to this situation or this person when maybe they're not doing that for me, or, it's affecting how I function. And, you have to really turn it off. And someone told me, they were like, you could never be a therapist. You're too empathetic. So thank you for saying that, because it's like, we're all good human beings. I think people go into this field because they want to help people and they want to work with people and change lives and impact one another, but you have to know the time and place, okay? I'm going home with my family. I'm not going to pour into this is what happened with 4 clients today. I'm going to shut that hat off and put on a different one and be a mom. And I think that's amazing because with anything in life, it's balance always.
Absolutely. And for any therapists out there, I do think being empathetic is actually a wonderful trait to have as a clinician, right? Like if you've ever been to a doctor's appointment or a hospital and the bedside manner is terrible, you
Right.
don't feel heard. You don't feel like maybe you got what you wanted, right? So people like for their providers to be able to listen and to empathize and to understand to what the best of our ability what they're going through. That's very beneficial. But to that point, yes, right, I need an outlet for that at the end of my day so that I'm not carrying all that energy around with me. It is a beautiful thing, Rylan, to be a healer of others. I would suggest doing that where you're around other colleagues because you can bounce that off other people. I do see with colleagues of mine that maybe work remotely or in a solo practice, kind of not having that space to debrief things or to be able to, just say, oh my God, I had a heavy session. Can I just sit with you for a moment? Right. Like, so that's really important. And that would be part of self-care, I think, is to make sure that you have those outlets available to you.
No, and I really appreciate you saying that because I think like you deal with some heavy stuff. Imagine you're not empathetic and you don't care. Like that's horrible. That's like going to the doctor and you're saying I'm really sick and they're like I don't care. Like you need an empathetic therapist, but again, I think having that space where you can feel it and process it and then let it go and do your next session is truly the best way because you're not letting those emotions drive the car. So, thank you for saying that. So anyone who wants to go into the fields, if you're empathetic like I am, you can definitely still do it. She just confirmed it, guys. So don't worry. Don't let anything stop you.
Nope, not at all. And we need more empathetic people. That's something that I really value in clinicians that I look to join my practice is that empathy. So that's to me something that is a valuable trait.
So I guess I want to kind of ask you, like, for anyone listening, what message do you want them to take away from our podcast today?
I think the major one is to prioritize your mental health. Know what you need to do for yourself. In other words, you could go on Pinterest and look up self-care ideas, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But maybe I'm not a book reader, so reading a book, right, isn't my thing, or I'm live in a place where I can't really go for a walk every day because of weather. So like, right. So finding your own outlets, finding what helps with your anxiety. Most of us experience some level of anxiety, right? So, do you take a warm shower? Do you journal? Do you count to 10? There's no wrong answer, but finding what works best for you and then making it part of your daily practices. Something really quick I'd like to mention as well. part of meditation or just general mindfulness is so important for us to practice every day in some way, shape, or form. And again, I put no rules or regulations on that because it's what you're comfortable with. But something as easy as a body scan, which I'm not sure if some of the listeners are familiar with, it's actually available on our website. I made a video of it under resources. It's just a guided meditation that's about 2 minutes long that will, you'll notice your shoulders, they drop down, and right, we're doing some deep breathing within it. We're checking in with each part of your body in that moment. So that way, okay, maybe I'm having a pain in my head right now, but I'm not having an aneurysm. I'm not dying. I'm just noticing that pain, and I can breathe through it, right?
Right.
It kind of ties back to that mind body connection we opened with talking about. So the nervous system, it's a great resource. But yeah, I would just say just paying attention and finding what works for you is best.
No, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate you releasing the stigma on mental health care because it's so important. It's hard to navigate life alone. And I think you can have friends that can be your therapist friend, but there's only so much those people can do and so much support they can give you. And I think exploring someone who knows the tools to have in your toolbox when you're having these challenges, it's a relief. It's a relief. I was scared to start therapy, and I'm so grateful I did because it's such a supportive outlet for me, and it's really helped me like know that I'm not alone. If something does go sideways, I'm fine. I got me, I got my therapist, I got my books, I got my podcast, like I'm okay. And I think coming to that realization is amazing, like realizing you're not alone even if it does feel like the world is ending. So I would recommend for anyone listening, if you don't have a therapist, maybe look into getting one, maybe find, an amazing counselor here at like BetterHelp Counseling. I think it's amazing and what you guys do, and I think it's so important, truly.
Yeah, we are accepting new clients at a Better Tomorrow Counseling, and gladly, we do virtual as well as in-person appointments. So we'd be glad to help anybody or help get them resources in their area if needed. So
So does Better Tomorrow Counseling do like, even if you're not in the state of Florida, can you join?
um, we actually are licensed in 4 states. So yes,
Awesome.
we're licensed in Florida, we're licensed in Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Maine.
Awesome. Okay, so for everyone listening, now you know they're amazing, great organization. What is the link to your website if people want to go check you guys out and see all the goodness and also find the cool resources you were mentioning?
That would be wonderful. It's www.abettertomorrowcounseling.net.
I love the name, like A Better Tomorrow, because I think that's something that a lot of people like, oh, today sucked, but it's like tomorrow's going to be better. There's going to be a better tomorrow.
Thank you. It originated actually from my son, believe it or not. We were sitting around as a family when I was going to start my practice, just as a solo, just me. And, we were kind of thinking of what's a good name. And I was really struggling with it. And I posed the question to my family. I said, well, why would you go to therapy, right? Like what would be a main goal? And my son said, for tomorrow to be better than today. And then he goes, a better tomorrow counseling. And I was like, there it is.
How
Like
old is
it
he?
just, he's 18 now, but this was 4 years ago. So yeah, he was about 14.
Wow, the emotional intelligence is through the roof. That's
Probably wants to take the company one day, take it over.
he should, he should. Good for him. That's amazing. But I love that so much. It really stuck with me because it's like tomorrow is going to be better. And a lot of people, it's like, oh, today sucked, but tomorrow's going to be better. And if not, the next day is going to be better. There's always going to be a better tomorrow.
I love it.
Thank you so much for joining me. This was such an honor, and I truly can't wait to have you back on. I loved our conversation, and I think this will help heal a lot of people and remind them they're not alone and mental health support is out there.
Thank you for having me, Rylan. I appreciate it.
Of course.